Good morning, good afternoon, and good night. It's Foreign Bite. Today is November 21st, 2024, and this is our day late Trans Day of Remembrance stream. Um, things are pretty bleak for queer people generally, but trans people especially right now. And as a trans creator with a mostly trans audience, it behooved me not to say something. Is what we usually feel like. We've had kind of a rough year in terms of our content and our work like consistency. And we used to do a lot more streams about like current event topics. But we kind of fell off because it's been really hard to keep that up because of like a lot of energy taken up doing research and just the depressingness of it all. um, we say a lot of times that we're focused on intersectionality, that we care about like where solidarity can converge in terms of that. That we wanted to have a community where it was as natural to talk about like kink dynamics or polyamory as it was to talk about video games or anime. And of course, like more political stuff too. And we're certainly not breaking any new ground with that. But I don't know. It's been kind of rough, and I think that we have a little bit of envy for the types of people who don't talk about politics at all in their media presence. But I mean, if anything, it's more envy of the place someone can be, feeling that it's fine to do that and not want to, use your platform for, positive things. I'm forgetting the word here. Privilege, yeah. We envy the privilege that some people have to just ignore shit. Although some people ignore stuff, people at platform, mind you, ignore stuff because they're scared. They're scared of getting deplatformed. They're scared of losing ad revenue. They're scared of losing relevance. Our relevance is microscopic, so we don't lose much in that regard. But it's getting to the point where it is feasible that a stream like this in a couple of years will not be easy to do. Not politically necessarily. I mean, yes, politically, but like mechanically, I don't know how things will pan out in terms of expression and being able to, I don't know, uh, talking negatively about the government. I don't know what kind of terrible world we're gonna fall into. And I mean, with the context of the 2024 election, obviously a lot of people are despairing. More than just trans people, but I mean, if anyone has the right to despair, it's marginalized people, at the most marginalized among us. We are not dead despite efforts. I am glad that you failed. I'm glad that it is here. Hello, Sani. Hello, Evie. Oh yeah, I guess that is ambiguous. I immediately thought of suicidal ideation and stuff, but also the world wants queer and trans people dead. So Porno que no los dos. Anyway, um, before I get into the reading that I have set up for today, I want to tell an anecdote-ish thing. Oh, I was supposed to loop this. Repeat. I just like floating in space. And there's no need to apologize. Speaking your truth. And like we said when we posted that we were streaming, not assuming that it saw it, Sonny, but this is an emotional pit stop. This is a space to be as vulnerable as you feel comfortable. Um, it's hard. It's hard right now, and we've lost people in Trans Day of Remembrance since yesterday, and it's real out here. It's scary, and I mean, I can't proclaim that the person I know that died this year was like, you know, like a friend. Technically they were like a colleague, like but a fellow VTuber, someone that whose streams I like to watch, whose Discord I was in, who I had hung out with a handful of times in like a VC watching like a movie or something, took their own life. Sorry, took its own life. And it's just like terrifying, it being that close, you know? And it could be any one of us, and like things don't feel safe. And being able to talk about stuff, being able to openly express that you're struggling and have struggled, I think is what allows folks to build community and find like-minded folks, even within, you know, like sub communities, because not everyone in, say, the baby fur community is like concentrating on anything other than, you know, the narrow tunnel vision of like their own interests and their own issues. And sometimes it feels like, even when you're surrounded by people who should understand you, that you can't really speak your truth fully, or that you can't say how hard it is to get through the day. And honestly, it's been really scary seeing the fracturing of that. And I think that a lot of people are scared that they are like too sad around others, that, you know, oh, you should be like, there's a lot of ways that people invisibly police other folks' emotions, and a lot of that comes down to uh, it not being okay to be openly not okay, and that's part of why we are the way we are today. It says you guys are taking a break. No? Huh, that's weird. That's super weird. We actually set it so that we didn't get that, so that we don't have pre rolls. You're supposed to not get ads for the first hour of stream, or like the first 45 minutes. So I don't know why you get hit with so many ads, Evie. Sorry. Yeah, it's just another reason that maybe we should stream on YouTube more. Um, um, I remember talking to someone and yesterday, someone I was close to, and they're also trans, and they had mentioned someone in there, like someone who they brush shoulders with in trans community, had literally put as their like Discord status, if you doom about like the election or whatever, I'm gonna block you. And I haven't seen too much of that, like a response to doomerism that strong, but I've seen it here and there. People posting about how, you know, like how like they're tired of seeing people being like snidely talking about how shitty like certain people are, even people that we're gonna talk about on the stream, like people in the political class specifically, or famous people, but like that they want to disengage from those people. And I think that there's a difference between disengaging from discourse, from disengaging from community. I think a lot of people are basically turtling and kind of not exactly. I wouldn't say that people are being toxically positive necessarily, but I have seen a lot of inklings of people being unwilling to be around negativity about things that are going on. And I'm certainly one to discourage people from doom scrolling, but I think that some of the people who are the most not okay right now are the people who also need some encouragement and need to be told, like, you're not wrong for despairing, that that is a natural response to what's happening. And I mean, that's even just on the like on a more general scale of like everything that's happening. Not to mention like stuff that's like more personal or in like sub communities. Like, you know, drama and discourse are like a layer cake, depending on where you are. And that's scary. Um, and I do think it's important to, if you know that a lot of negative, like discourse or coverage of stuff is gonna like affect you, then like it's understandable to disengage. Just like if this stream is already bumming you out, it is okay to step away. It is okay to not watch this one. You know, I know that our streams are generally can run pretty not always super emotionally wholesome, I'll say. But we did a little bit of research. We grabbed some links to some articles and some like blog posts of trans people talking about trans Day of Remembrance and like some of the stuff that people have been thinking and going through. And you know, it's this one's gonna be heavy even for us. I was actually procrastinating for the last hour because I was just trying to get myself in a headspace where I felt like I could do this. Um, yeah, action oriented optimism. I think I think that's good. But I also think that like especially right now, that it's okay to be mourning. It's okay to like be licking your wounds. Um, and especially considering a lot of people that like we're in community with are also like very disabled and very disenfranchised, that a lot of people feel like there's very little that they can do. And you know, us as a streamer and you know an artist online feel like we can do at least something with our platform, so that's what we're doing. And I guess it's less about like uh you know, oh, we have a massive platform and we need to reach a bunch of people. It's just like we know that there are people in community with us that value our voice on the topic and our approach to it, and we want to do what we can to be good by y'all. So I guess that's our action oriented optimism, or as close to it as we can. We don't actually consider ourselves an optimist. I don't know if we say a realist, quote unquote, but we definitely edge towards pessimism. But of course, it's not a zero sum game. You can hope for the best and prepare for the worst. And honestly, you really should. Uh, yeah, be doing your best to prepare for the worst. And on that topic of like people being disenfranchised and being disabled and not feeling like they can do a lot, I do think that like building community, like reaching out to friends, for example, that sort of thing is relevant. and it does save lives sometimes. I mean, you won't generally ever know, but like it, you'd be surprised by how the smallest consideration can have a world of effect for someone. Oh yeah, if you're too negative, it can definitely be like a weight around your neck, and it's hard to do anything. Certainly. The main thing we've been struggling with is plain old trauma. I can relate to that. Um, I don't want to be too pessimistic here, but I'm kind of in the thought process of trauma doesn't like go away. You just find best case scenario, you find ways to cope, and healing is possible, but like I feel like there'll still be scars. I'm not interested in placating people in the way of like it'll eventually get better, not because I don't think they can get better, but because I don't want to position things as one day it just won't hurt anymore. Because at least for us, even shit that I think we're emotionally okay with now, stuff that we've like licked our wounds, healed from to a reasonable amount, it still hurts. Not as much as it used to necessarily, but it definitely still hurts. And I think that it's valid to be struggling in your own personal ways, even when things are notably good from a wider perspective. If people aren't familiar with Trans Day of Remembrance, I sometimes mix up with Trans Day of Visibility, which I believe is in like March. Trans Day of Remembrance is the day that the trans community and our allies observe for memorializing the folks that we've lost, especially to transphobic violence, um, which does include suicide. Although I would say that not every trans person who takes their own life is doing so just because of big anti-trans bigotry, for example. Like lives are multitudinous. For example, we also have depression, so like things suck, but we would have a negative brain meat response to living life regardless. So like we start at a minimum level of angst about stuff. I think that over the years I have kind of drifted away from going to actual vigils and memorials, mostly because of COVID, but also because as things have gotten worse and worse and worse, it's also been feeling like it's not as safe anymore. We'll be talking about some of that stuff in a little bit. But one thing I do encourage folks to do or look into is self defense, because even for folks that work from home, get like your medication and groceries delivered and stuff, at some point you will have to go outside. And if that's the case, and shit, fuck the like being visibly trans. If you are visibly gender non-conforming, or you don't match up to what someone would assume your gender would be and should be, then you could be targeted, because even cis people who are gender non-conforming or for whatever reason aren't considered uh, you know masculine enough or feminine enough are also getting targeted by like anti-queer and transphobic violence. Um, Self-defense can be learning like self-defense skills. If you can't afford to get like into like a martial arts or self-defense class, uh, I'd say at least try to look up some YouTube tutorials. You know, that's my purse type shit, like something. People have been talking about, like getting like depending on your state, getting like handgun certified or whatnot. But at the very least, a lot of people are like, just try to get some mace. There's self defense items you can get on Amazon for fairly cheap. I'm pretty sure. Um, but I hope that no one here will ever have to use uh, self defense skills or self defense items because that is a terrifying situation that I don't generally wish on anyone. I mean, I think that we've been pretty we've been fairly antagonistic in the past about like trans folks that are stealth, but mostly from a perspective of trans folks that are stealth but not going stealth for for safety reasons, or not primarily for safety reasons. um I think that it is really terrifying, and I know that for some people going stealth isn't really possible, really. I mean, you kind of have to pass to go stealth. I think that on the other side, or the other side of the spectrum, would be like quote unquote closeting or a boy or girl moding, depending on uh your gender assigned at birth. Of like, you know, pretending to be the thing that everyone told you that you're supposed to be, right? Um, and that one to me has always been like, whereas the idea of stealth has always made me feel a little upset in a like an angry sort of way, uh especially at like such a necessity for some people. And also how it kind of it's like a two-way mirror of community. We once read an article on stream a while ago about someone's like testimonial about like living stealth, and actually talked about once like being on a train and seeing like transphobic harassment, and she didn't step up and help the person or anything, or even provide comfort, because it's like, well, I don't want to be scrutinized. I don't want people being like, you must be trans too. And I mean, even for our cis allies, sometimes being supportive of a marginalized group will get you treated as such sometimes. And that fucking blows. No shame in girl or boy moding. I mean, there shouldn't be. I think that for us, and I think that I don't think it's shameful, but I do think it's sad. I think it's sad because of how it happens and when it happens. Because other, I guess, comparing it to stealthing, other than for safety, I think that it comes from a really negative place of like, I'm not good enough, or I'm not trans enough, or I'm not gender that I am enough. There's a lot of negativity associated with girl boy moding, and I think that it kind of sucks that there is that reputation of being, like, to be, especially in like trans femme spaces, it's seen as like it's like the big dysphoria hoodie, uh, and I think that there's kind of, as a mascot, like trans Minhara-chan is kind of like this weird this weird thing where it's like she's she's boy moding, but maybe also because being an anime character or like an anime style character, she passes. And that's also been like a criticism I've seen in the trans community of boy moders, that most boy moders actually do pass, and that they're just like basically like black pilled and stuff. And far be it for me to deny the existence of that sort of thing. I mean, I'm pretty sure the 4chan board TTT still exists, and is just like it really can fuck up your brain meat. But generally, if you need to get through, if you can't be out, if it's not safe for you to be out for whatever reason, you're not ready, then that's valid. I don't think that in good conscience, I could ever like shit on someone for trying to stay safe, or having trouble with being seen. Um, okay, before I start going into readings, I do want to tell sort of an anecdote. I don't know if it's even useful for anyone, but it's something I was thinking about a lot recently, because our trans journey has been, especially our early trans journey, was a little atypical from what we've seen other folks, especially in like trans film spaces, and is interesting because just like a lot of people, the like not ostracization, the fact that um the education system generally doesn't teach, or especially when we were growing up, did not teach about like trans people, that media depictions of trans people were always like not using like good, or like uh was never using language that was nice or equitable, and was always like the butt of a joke or something gross, right? Or 90% of the time. Because of that, so many people don't even know that trans identity exists for like a while. So that's actually kind of typical for our experience, because we didn't know that trans people existed till we were 18, or I guess no, yeah, 18. Because we went to college, and one of the first friends we made in college was a trans man, and we did like this school icebreaker thing. He was also of color, and we were like in this like uh people of color meetup on our college campus for like new students, and we we sort of always think of how simple it was for us to be like, oh, trans identity exists, all right, that's cool. Because it was just like, I don't know, believe people who they say they are. The fact that so many people have an issue with like how people present themselves and how people want to be addressed and treated, before you even get to all the other stuff, is just always kind of like a some spinach in my teeth. But for a couple of years, I sort of we sort of knew trans people existed. Uh, we knew trans people existed, but we had only known trans masculine people for a while, and that lack of visibility of trans femmes contributed to us not recognizing that we could be trans, and and that was a struggle. But while we were still in college, a weird thing happened that we didn't think very much of trans identity. That is, it was like, oh, some people are like, yeah, the gender they gave me at birth is not right, and I'm just like, yeah, cool, that's fine. Um, but then finding out about like all the trans hate and like violence really fucked me up, because especially being I guess we haven't talked about this a lot, but we were raised by someone who was like very much trying to groom us into being a civil rights leader from an early age. Someone who believed very strongly in like well, okay, they didn't believe in collective action, they hated communism, but they believed in like community organizing, and like marginalized people fighting for equality and freedom. But the focus of the education that we were given about that was mostly just about like the struggles of African Americans. And it wasn't until getting to like high school that we even learned about like folks like Harvey Milk. So not even knowing about like queer liberation for a long time, I was like, oh, what else don't I know about? And I think it was particularly different for like trans equality and like the fight for trans equality, because as opposed to hearing about history book type stuff, instead of hearing about like the things that have happened or the court cases that have like cemented like certain like rights, and whatever fights or like special like holidays that exist to commemorate stuff like Martin Luther King Day or something, there's that, and then there's literally seeing uh, a bunch of like bigoted violence, and I think that really changed my brain meat because I saw on my college campus, my liberal arts college campus, like these trans masculine people being harassed. Someone tried to like set a trans man's room on fire on my campus, and that was within like a couple of months of me even knowing trans people existed. And I'm like, wait, so not only is there a whole like different identity of people that exist that no one ever bothered to tell me about, but also a lot of people who know about them hate them and are trying to kill them. What the fuck? Like, it was just like, maybe it was just our autistic brain, but it was just like, why are people so cruel? And I think that those sort of epiphanies are things that make people not want to come out, and it is part of the culture that we are in, that tries to discourage trans people from coming out or queer people from coming out in general. Um, it's kind of hard to prevent people from knowing that trans people exist right now, especially because of the GOP banging their fucking drum about trans people. But like, they've switched to the other tactic of trying to make trans life so bad that like we don't go out or we don't come out, and that's terrifying. I think that a lot of stuff that I learned about like the trans experience is, especially before we came out or realized that we were trans, was definitely seeped in like the effects of trans misogyny, and it was kind of terrifying. The friend that I mentioned, the first trans friend I ever made, like they had a bunch of trauma about like literally having lost a queer friend because that friend's parent had killed them for being gay. Uh, and it just was really scary. Um, and I think that there was a moment where I almost realized that I was trans while we were still in college. I think I tell the story sometimes where it's just like, oh, my trans guy friend wants to date me, but at the time I was like, oh wait, but I'm a guy. If my parents find out that I'm dating a guy, they'll disown me. And it's like, well, there is a loophole. If to my parents I misgender who the person who could have been my trans boyfriend, then they would be okay with it. And I was like, that's disgusting. I don't want to do that. So I'm sorry I can't date you. On top of the fact that I was just like, huh. Also like to date. I also like to in a relationship. I want one of us to wear a dress. I literally had said like something like, uh, "But if I was in a relationship, I want one of us to wear a dress," and not realizing the irony of saying that, and not recognizing that, well, if it had to be one of us, why do I want to be one of the people to wear a dress? And it's just like it was years away from a brain blast. But I guess I'm meandering here. Um, I was talking about it with a friend recently, but like all these little touch points of negativity that has shaped how I view trans identity has certainly made me feel like to be trans is to be traumatized, and I don't think that that should be the case or that that will be the case in the future. But I think that it's important to like fight not just for recognizing that bad things are happening to trans people, but also to fight for trans happiness and positivity. Because it still fucks with me that the moment that we realized we were trans was literally realizing we didn't feel safe around the people that we lived around, which was funny because we literally were like, "Oh damn, trans person would not feel safe in this environment." Oh wait, I don't feel safe in this environment. Shit, does that mean I'm trans? And then less than a year later, while still living with the same people, I transitioned anyway. Don't regret that. Don't regret that at all. Well, all that is to say, for us, trans identity has been seeped in misery. Um, and it's okay to struggle, and it's okay to have that in common with other queer people. I know there's a lot of people who only want like stories of trans joy, for example, while we're like so much seeped in like trauma core and like you know looking our trauma in the eyes, especially through art. I hope that wasn't weird and meandery because I feel like I kind of got off topic a little bit. I don't know if any of that was cohesive. I'm pretty sure it made sense. I just don't know if it was cohesive. Uh, I have to admit, I'm at least a little bit apprehensive about my place and all this. Where I'm like, who am I to speak about these issues? I mean, yeah, I'm trans, but there's people who are more well educated and more well versed in these issues, and it's like lived experience is valid too. Which is why I wanted to start with talking about my lived experience with trans misery before we start reading like articles and stuff. Um, yeah. Sometimes I just boy mode for convenience. An old Vietnam shirt, work pants, and ABU hat look pretty masculine on us. I think that there's a difference between boy moding and not caring if the clothes that you wear don't communicate your gender. Because the fucked up thing about especially like I guess I guess it's more like cis femmes as opposed to cis masks because like cis guys have the toxic masculinity culture basically is very strict about what clothes you can wear, but like for a cis woman wearing some pants and a t-shirt and a snapback will not get them misgendered generally. So like I think that it can count as boy moding what you're talking about, Evie. But at the same time, if you're not going out of your way to be extra feminine, I don't think that's necessarily boy moding. It's just you wearing what you want to wear. And I think that the expectation for trans people to be like ultra mask or ultra femme to be seen as valid of their gender, or like the idea of you need to try, like there's a lot of people like Blair White or whatever who are like, oh, you're not even trying, da 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 da, and it's just like, trying for who, proving what for who, because fitting into like what falling into binary gender tropes to please the dominant culture, it I feel like is generally gonna make a lot of people not happy with their own lives. There are some people that are fine with that. There are plenty of especially binary trans people who like are fine like wearing a skirt every day, or wearing a suit and nothing else. But I think that people should have the freedom to to uh, exist in their expression outside of that, and it not being an indictment of their gender. Let's start with something positive. So this is just a post we found on Tumblr, and of course, there's just a lot of trans Day of Remembrance posts, and especially in conversation of like the despair that's pushing people to think that they just shouldn't be around anymore. Um, I think this post is important. Trans men, I love you. Please stay here. Trans women, I love you. Please stay here. Trans people who are not men or women, I love you. Please stay here. Non binary trans people, I love you. Please stay here. People who can't be themselves out loud yet, I love you. Please stay. Trans people who are lonely and hurting, I love you. Please stay here. Trans people who haven't found a place that will hold you close and safe, I love you. Please stay. Trans people who are afraid to stay, I love you. Please stay here. Please stay. Please stay. I know that there's gonna be some amount of people who may take these as, you know, hugbotsy platitudes, but I think that it's important to encourage our trans siblings to not give up. But I think that, moreover, like I was talking about, like the people who are kind of like uh, angling away from folks in the community who are despairing the most, I think that it's important that like there be a lifeline for those people. And I don't just mean the fucking phone, like the phone hotline. Honestly, we have called Trans Lifeline more times than we can count, but it's definitely within the triple digits. But it kind of makes us sad because the amount of trans people who need the service far exceeds, or I should say the resource, not the service, the resource far exceeds the capability of Trans Lifeline and even like the Trevor Project. We had a list of different hotlines and warm lines we would call when we were at our worst, and especially Trans Lifeline, you're gonna get a busy signal a lot. You're going to I would say I got a call. I called every like 10 calls of Trans Lifeline. I probably got to talk to someone like once out of those 10 times. More on other days, and that's not to say don't use Trans Lifeline or whatever. But I do always feel a little bit weird when giving the number out because of our own experiences. Because the last thing I want someone to experience is being in crisis, calling Trans Lifeline, and them not picking up. Because it's happened to us. We literally called Trans Lifeline like 20 times, like in like a 10-minute period because we were like really close to not being here. This was years ago. But what what allowed us to step off the ledge, so to speak, was actually being like, okay, Trans Lifeline is not working. I'm gonna call a friend that I trust, and they helped. And sometimes just having an ear to listen to you, someone who's not gonna like judge you and is going to like recognize your pain is really important. So as much as I also am like, yeah, like hotlines and warm lines are important, related to this post, I want to say like for us that are who feel like we have the spoons to do so, we should try to reach out to folks we haven't talked to in a while or we know are struggling. Um, if you have a friend that you see doom posting on social media, like maybe DM them, ask them how they're doing. You know, if you have time, maybe do some hangouts or something. I think that sometimes we highly underestimate the ability for community to keep us afloat because we live in an individualist society that tells us that, you know, we are the last line of defense between everything the world wants to do to us and happiness. Hey Dell, it's good to see you. I look almost perfectly androgynous, so if I dress like a dude, I'll look like one. I just don't have the spoons to look femme all the time. Hmm. That's fair. I mean, in terms of clothing stuff, like we we don't want to look for them all the time, especially as most of us are ambi, and even those that in our system that are like binary don't necessarily always like want to be dressed in a binary fashion because clothes should not be genders. Okay, now we're getting into the like the stuff. We're getting into the stuff now. So be prepared, be prepared, be prepared. Okay, so this is a human rights campaign. If you don't know about the Human Rights Campaign, they are a nonprofit organization that works towards equality for queer people uh, in the world, but especially in America. And they also do a little bit of lobbying for queer rights. In my and what I've seen from the Human Rights Campaign, I feel like um, there's been a lot of L's, especially since like I don't know 2016 for some reason. But like I think the organization is important, and just because we lose a battle does not mean we've lost the war. This one was important for us to talk to read because this in the in the context of talking about the folks that we have lost in 2024, this article talks about some of the people that we have lost in 2024, and I think reflecting on that is important. You know, a kind of say their names moment. Though honestly, with the amount of people that were lost, I doubt that every name would be here. The Human Rights Campaign is both saddened and infuriated by the deaths of at least 30 transgender and gender expansive. Ooh, I've never seen that term before. And gender expansive people whose lives were tragically and inhumanely taken through violent means, including gun and intimate partner violence in 2024. Since 2013, the Human Rights Campaign has tracked incidents of fatal trans violence. The same year, the Federal Bureau of Investigation began reporting on hate crimes motivated by anti trans bias and provided action items that can help end the violence. These victims, like us, were loving partners, parents, family members, friends, and community members. They worked, they went to school, and attended houses of worship. They were real people who did not deserve to have their lives taken. As we continue working towards justice and equality for trans and gender expansive people, we celebrate the lives of those we have lost in 2024. In 2024, 77% of victims were people of color. 53% were black transgender women. 60% were killed with a gun. 39% of victims with a known killer were killed by a romantic slash sexual partner, friend, or family member. 40% were misgendered or dead named by authorities or the press. Quenisha Chantel, who often went by Coco among her friends, and has also been named in some press reports as a name, had in recent years been involved in ballroom and drag performances across the Southeast U.S. and Chicago. Oh, we really need to like do like a ball culture episode of the stream at some point. Friends described her as radiant and stunning. Coco's mother, Toy Nicole Ratliff, remembers Coco as happy and full of joy. Tragically, on Sunday, November 15th. Oh, this was days ago. This is like a week ago. Fuck. Coco was shot and killed on Guilford College Road in Greensboro, North Carolina. She was just 26 years old. Santiano San Coleman, a 48-year-old black gender nonconforming person who went by San or Strawberry, was born and raised in Athens, Georgia. San was loved by many and had a particularly close relationship with their mother and younger sister, and described San as the life of the party. They regularly attended every cookout, party, and family function, and often did their friends' hair. San tragically died in Athens, Georgia on Saturday, October 19th, 2024. Honey Daniels, a 37-year-old black trans woman who was also named also named as a name in some media reporting, was known among loved ones for her charming personality, love of superhero movies, and hair and makeup skills. Speaking to Gay City News, Dominique L. Wright McLeod, a friend of 22 years, described her as someone who could make anyone look like a movie star with a little time and the right makeup palette, and who has a big portion of the LGBT community in Buffalo and Rochester. Hani was killed in a hit and run in Rochester, New York on Wednesday, October 2nd, 2024. I think that it is interesting, this cause of death, because, like I had mentioned before about like Trans Day of Remembrance centering around transphobic violence, we don't know if that was a hate crime. Um, I don't really see people who have died of natural causes in the trans community memorialized in on Trans Day of Remembrance, but I think that's also generally because a lot of us die before our time. And I think it's important just to recognize that there is cruelty in trans lives, even if it's not necessarily fueled by uh, someone hating the trans person in question. Not sure how long we'll stay. Hard to think and needs to rest brain. Stress no help. That's valid. Please take care of yourself. Kasim Omar was a 29-year-old black trans woman who fled to the United States in 2015 as a refugee from Somalia by way of Kenya to escape anti LGBTQ harassment and violence. Setting in Columbus, Ohio, she was tragically shot in 2022 by two teenagers who lived in her apartment complex and had been harassing her due to her gender identity and sexuality. Though she survived the shooting, she was paralyzed and continued to a nursing home as a result, ultimately succumbing to her injuries and passing away on September 6, 2024. Fuck. Red, also known as Barbie, was a 25-year-old black transgender woman who loved Nicki Minaj hair and makeup and dreamed of opening her own beauty business. On September 8, 2024, she was shot and killed in Chicago, Illinois. Vanity Williams, a 34-year-old black transgender woman, was an Air Force veteran who had recently began nursing school with the goal of opening a med spa. Tragically, before she was able to realize this dream, she was shot and killed in Houston, Texas, August 8th, 2024. Tyvone Lathan, a 24-year-old black transgender woman who also went by a Ty, was tragically found dead in the neighborhood in East Baltimore, Maryland on Sunday, August 4th. Ty's aunt, when speaking with reporters, said she was just who she was, a very outgoing person, a sweetheart. Page Boyd, reported to Ty's best friend, said, there's so many hearts breaking open out here. How can you wake up every day knowing what you did? It's terrible. Ty didn't deserve to be in no alley. I think this is the first person that I don't necessarily know is of color, for sure, on this list. 20-year-old Dylan Gurley, a transgender woman from Little Elm, Texas, was killed in Denton, Texas on July 23rd, 2024. She was found unconscious with multiple stab wounds by police and was subsequently declared dead at a local hospital less than an hour later. There's a lot of these from Texas, I am noticing, which honestly is not a surprise, but here we are. Monique Brix's sibling, Lika, described her as fun-loving and smart. Others remember Monique as an amazing hairstylist. Every year on her birthday, Monique centered causes that people should support, including for LGBTQ plus rights. On Friday, July 19th, 2024, Monique, a 49-year-old black transgender woman, was found shot in Orlando, Florida, near the Florida Mall. She later died after being transported to the hospital, according to Orange County deputies. Kenji Spurgeon A 23-year-old black transgender woman was described by her family as being a bright light in our lives on a GoFundMe page. They go on to say that Kenji was known for having an infectious smile and quick wit, and had an extraordinary ability to uplift everyone around with laughter, a joke, a song, or a dance. Kenji inspired us to seek joy and be cheerleaders for one another. Tragically, Kenji was shot and killed in the early morning hours of July 1st, 2024, in Seattle, Washington. Chanel Boswell, a 30-year-old black transgender woman, is remembered as one of a kind and a sweet soul, according to her obituary. Shannon was killed on July 2nd, 2024, in Atlanta. Her life was honored on July 13th with a service filled with loved ones and friends sharing fond memories of Shannon. Shannon was someone who loved people and enjoyed hobbies of watching movies and living life to the fullest. A friend described Shannon as their best friend and dear friend who was always there when you needed her. This is the youngest person on the list, and there have been other young people who have died this year that were trans, but I didn't hear about this one, I don't think. Polly Likens, a 14-year-old transgender girl, was a bright and loving individual, cherished by all who knew them. According to the GoFundMe page and Polly's obituary, it is said that she lit up every room she entered, always making people smile and passing around her contagious laughter. She loved music, Fortnite, and Roblox. Polly was found dead in Sharon, Pennsylvania on June 25th, 2024. She was last seen on June 23rd at Bud Public Park in Morristown, New Jersey? Two days later, on June 25th, Polly was reported missing. That same day, Polly's dismembered body was found in the Shenango River Lake, a reservoir in western Pennsylvania, as confirmed by Mercer County Coroner's Office and Pennsylvania State Police. That one hits the hardest, I think. Lyra Tassi, a 35-year-old white transgender woman who was found dead in a vehicle after the car crash in Iowa on Saturday, June 22nd. Evidence from the scene confirms that she was killed prior to the car crash. Lyra, who was described by friends and loved ones as an activist and an artist, had moved to Minneapolis just 6 weeks prior to her death in order to better pursue her career as a DJ in a city with a large trans community. That last sentence really fucks me. Um, and there's some other stuff that I'm gonna read that will probably mention this. But like, even in progressive cities, trans hate crimes are on the rise. Jaslyn Johnson, an 18-year-old transgender teenager, was killed on May 6, 2024, in Las Vegas, Nevada, according to police reports. The Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department found Johnson inside a vehicle on the morning of May 6th near Maryland Parkway in Las Vegas. Jaslyn was pronounced dead at the scene. Soon after, the Clark County Coroner's Office ruled her death a homicide. Yella Robert Clark Jr., a 45-year-old black transgender person who was serving a life sentence at Agnalia Prison in Louisiana, was killed in a fight with several other inmates on April 2nd, 2024. With Yella misreporting and misgendering in initial reports led to delays in the Human Rights Campaign's own reporting, most articles referring to them with their birth name and sex assigned at birth. Though evidence suggests Clark may have used both Yella and Robert, their birth name, in prison. They identified as transgender, had been diagnosed with gender dysphoria, and had begun taking M to F hormones to physically transition while incarcerated. Michelle Henry, a 25-year-old black transgender woman, lived in San Francisco, where she had been a lifelong active member of the LGBTQ plus community, including attending the SF San Francisco LGBT Center Youth Program. She was referred to as a ray of light by the center's executive director, Rebecca Rolfe, who further described Michelle as kind, deeply caring, courageous, and fearless. Sadly, on May 15, 2024, she was stabbed and killed at a private residence While her alleged killer has been detained, the San Francisco Police Department put out a statement that is an open and active investigation, as requesting anyone with information to call the tip line or to text the tip line. I see. Hello. Uh, hey, Specky. We are observing Trans Day of Remembrance. Hope you are coping okay. It's good to see you. Brandon Tay Dior Thomas, a 17-year-old black transgender girl in Mobile, Alabama, was beloved by her friends and family. Speaking with HRC, her grandmother described Tay as someone who always had a huge smile on her face, showing her dimples, and that she loved doing her hair and would help anyone. She was further described as shy but so fearless with natural leadership ability. Tragically, she was shot and killed on May 7th, 2024. Her alleged killer, who has been arrested, was her romantic partner. Rihanna Hernandez, a 54-year-old Latina transgender woman, was born in Mexico and moved to the United States when she was 19. She owned she owed Reina's hair salon in Renton the fulfillment of a childhood dream. She was described by friends and family as a happy, loving person and a dreamer who was hardworking. She was shot and killed in Renton, Washington on February 26, 2024. Kita B was described as her authentic self through and through by her friend of almost 2 decades, Chris Wade, executive director of the Justice Project, who also said that Kita was very well loved in the streets, meaning the LGBTQ plus community. LGBTQ plus community. Kita, a 46-year-old transgender black woman, was killed in a hit and run incident in Kansas City, Missouri on May 3rd, 2024. Star Brown, a black trans woman, was shot and killed in Memphis, Tennessee, April 19th, 2024. Across multiple social media posts, the love the community felt for her was clear, with loved ones describing her as someone who was truly loved, always had uplifting words, and one of the sweetest, and a beautiful soul. A balloon release was held in her honor at the site of her passing on Friday, April 26th, and a memorial service was held on May 4th. Okay, we're more than halfway through. Sasha Williams, a 36-year-old multiracial transgender woman, was described as a selfless artist who had a heart of gold and someone who had earned their GED despite struggling with her mental health. According to media reports, in an interview with the Las Vegas Review Journal, Williams' aunt Tina Thornton said that she dreamed of being a performer in Las Vegas. Sasha was stabbed and killed in Las Vegas, Nevada, though her death occurred on January 26, 2024. HRC learned of her passing in late March. That's another thing about all this. Because of spotty media coverage and, of course, like dead naming and misgendering, it can be hard to tally the most accurate numbers for all the trans folks we lose in a given year. I think despite everything, I'll still transition soon. I wish I wasn't so fat and old. Lol. Baby, baby, baby. You are a baby. You are not old. I understand your feelings though. I mean, it is never too late, obviously, but most trans folks I know would have liked to transition earlier. And I'm glad to hear that. It, I say it's still worth it. Andrea Doria das Passos was killed outside the Miami City Ballet in Miami, Florida on April 23rd, 2024. She was experiencing homelessness at the time of her death and had been dealing with housing insecurity for some time, as reported by her family. On April 25th, a vigil for Andrea was held in Miami Beach's Old City Hall, organized by Pride Lines, a local LGBTQ plus community center with which Andrea was connected. Andrea's mom, who was in attendance, expressed gratitude for the community and life Andrea had been able to build before her death. noting, I feel a bit lighter knowing that she had this group of people who loved her and accepted her. According to their obituary, River Never Goddard had an amazing and outgoing personality. She was very creative and artistic. She loved to write her own music. Her cuddly nature was only matched by her quick wit and goofiness. River, who used she, they pronouns, also went by Phoenix and their birth name Neva. On April 5th, 2024, Stowe, Massachusetts police responded to a call for a wellness check. Police were able to make their way inside the home after 2 hours and found River had been killed by stabbing. T legend Billions Arnold had swag. A 36-year-old black transgender man was shot and killed in Halliday Beach, Florida on April 3rd, 2024. T was known among friends and family for his love of travel, his nieces and nephews, and for always offering words of encouragement to loved ones in need. I will admit, it is hard to get through this, and I understand that some people are not okay, and that this is not uh, making you feel great. Um, but I think it's important to say their names and to give some amount of reverence to their struggle, even if it's hard. I don't know. I will hope that that if we were to be among the lost, or if someone we were close to was among the lost, that other people would speak our names. It's super weird that in an online sense, it's kind of weird. We don't want our legal name, even though we've changed it to be like public. Like if we die, we would not mind be at all being memorialized as literally the Fluff by Entertainment System because that's who we are. Africa Perelia Garcia, a 25-year-old transgender woman, also referred to sometimes as Emma Garcia, was shot and killed in Santurce area of San Juan, Puerto Rico on February 2nd, 2024. Details about Africa's life has been slow to emerge as she was initially misgendered in dead name and news reports and police records. However, police have begun to speak out about Africa's life and death, noting she was loved and like a sister to them. Maratz, uh, Maratzis Medina, a 24-year-old Latina transgender woman, was called a sister by her friend Alicia Vinimo on a GoFundMe page, saying Maratzis was more than just a friend, according to her own Instagram account and a blog post by P. Was is that Pittsburgh lesbian correspondence? Maratzis was a makeup artist who also worked at Universal Studios Hollywood, enjoyed shopping and watching the Jurassic Park movie series, and admired Shakira and Carol G. Damn, I want ice cream now. Alex Taylor Franco, a 21-year-old transgender man, was shot and killed in Taylorsville, Utah on March 17, 2024. At a vigil held in his honor, Alex's loved ones described him as an athletic and cheerful man with a big heart who was so much more than just Alex. Reading so many trans people having been killed by guns emboldens me even more for like gun regulation. Not gonna lie. Diamond Brigham was a black 26-year-old trans woman. She was described by her friend as larger than life and was killed during a drive-by shooting while standing on a street in Houston. Her death and those of other trans people in Texas underscore the need for significant and immediate legislative changes. I haven't heard about someone being killed in a drive-by shooting since I moved out of Chicago. Gosh. When we were growing up, there was those were so prevalent. I mean, I'm sure they're still prevalent. Like gangs still exist. Righteous TK Chevy Hill, a 35-year-old black trans man known to his friends and family as TK and Chevy, pushed for black LGBTQ plus inclusion throughout his community. Chevy opened Evolution, a full-service hair salon dedicated to serving the LGBTQIA plus community in Atlanta. Tell black queer people feel comfortable in a traditional black barbershop setting. Chevy was tragically shot and killed in East Point, Georgia on February 28, 2024, in the front yard of his home. Kitty Monroe was also who also went by their birth name Marcos Luca, was a 43-year-old Latina transgender person who was known for painting, singing, and for having a great source and having a great sense of humor. In April 23rd, Kitty spoke about her experiences as a transgender person in a powerful interview for the YouTube channel Tales from the Streets. Tragically, Kitty was killed in Phoenix, Arizona on January 1st, 2024. The Human Rights Campaign has been tracking reports of fatal anti-trans violence for the past several years. Previous reports have found that can be found here. While every case is unique, far too often we see the same themes and trends emerge in a fatal trans violence cases we report. Young trans women of color, particularly black trans women, continue to be disproportionately affected. Victims are often killed by partners, family members, and acquaintances, and guns are used in the majority of deaths. Additionally, misgendering and dead naming remain far too common in media and law enforcement's reportings in these cases. Some of these cases involve clear anti-trans bias, and others, the victim's trans or gender expansive status may have made them more susceptible to violence by forcing them into unemployment, poverty, homelessness, and/or survival sex work. In all cases, it remains clear that the intersections of racism, sexism, homophobia, biphobia, and transphobia conspire to place the trans community at risk of fatal violence. So that's that. Thank you for staying with me through that. Hold on real quick. There's one more person I want to honor. So this was a streamer Puppy Doll who was uh, a trans streamer, VTuber. They were part of the like doll community, and it was part of the doll community, and it was a combat doll, and it liked streaming lots of games. It liked Final Fantasy 14, amongst other things. Their its streams often brought joy to our lives, and we wanted to become friends with it, and even maybe collab one day. Um, I don't want to look through all the stuff to find out the exact day of its death, but it died uh, uh, during the summer by its own hand. Um, it is weird because it was an acquaintance. We barely talked. But I don't know. I'll always remember it. That Puppy Doll's passing had certainly affected us very strongly because we had a lot in common, and in that way, it was kind of like a reflection and a reminder that there is a constant force pressing down. Um, I don't know why it took its own life, but considering all the folks that we've lost in the trans community in general, I can only assume it was a cocktail of things. And I don't know, sometimes the world seems really hopeless for us. I don't mean us as in just us, Fluff Bite, but just trans people in general. And it had been on our mind for since we found out it was a gut punch. I guess we're moving on. On this day of trans remembrance, please spare a moment to mourn the trans people who died in the closet, people who were misgendered in their eulogies, people whose lives were cut short before they could bloom, people whose secret clothes will be thrown out, people who couldn't survive the oppressive forces of transphobia, people who took their own lives because the suffering of the closet was too much for them to bear, people who were forced from their homes or their jobs because of their genders and died on the streets or in poverty, socially murdered. People who could have lived if they had a safe and welcoming community. People whose identities were disrespected, mocked, and hated both in life and in death. People who died on a waiting list. People who died before they could get on the waiting list. People who were denied the opportunity to express themselves, to live as themselves. People whose graves are desecrated with a dead name. If you're out and reading this, help your sisters, brothers, and siblings in the closet. Listen to them when they ask for your aid. Reach out to them. Buy them clothes. Send them money. Tell them things about your own transition. More than anyone else, closeted trans people need community and support. Mourn the dead. Fight like hell for the living. And here's a story from co host. I'll be pissed if I had a public memorial. I want to disappear and be forgotten within a generation. Why? I mean, the second part, disappear within a generation, I can kind of get in the sense of like, if everyone that you value is already dead, then like being remembered isn't like that big a deal, right? For some people. Uh, uh, I'll respect your wishes if you pass. But I also don't know what counts as public for you. I mean, I wouldn't want like for myself, I wouldn't want to march down the street, for example, necessarily. But you know, like an online vigil of people in the community, organized by people in the community or something, like I'd be honored, honestly. Trans Day of Remembrance. This is actually from last year's Trans Day of Remembrance because the co-host is dead now, and I am literally puppeting a corpse. Gosh, that hits different because of today. I have a story to tell for Trans Day of Remembrance, and it's weird because I'm remembering a person I never met who influenced my life anyway. Her name was Amelia. If you knew her, I hope I'm honoring her memory. When I figured out I was trans in Boston in 2018, I started meeting some of the local community of nerdy trans people. And in one crowd, I felt like I was meeting a ghost. Amelia, who had died from being refused mental health treatment just months earlier and whose absence left a somber mood. Starting from what I heard from people remembering here, I needed to find out more about Amelia. I found that Ze had written a number of papers published in math journals. This echoed a worry I was confronting at the time. I was still involved in natural language and processing research. I had published papers, and my own name will haunt me whenever I or someone else refers to those papers. And yet, here I saw a trans person who's person with several papers under her own name. They must have been able to change it and reclaim her publishing history. I couldn't ask her how, but just knowing that it was possible was enough to get me started. I contacted the people who run ACL Anthology, which publishes papers from NLP conferences, and asked them, hey, apparently it's okay for trans people to change their name on papers, and I'm trans, so can I do that? I found a sympathetic ear among the grad students who run the website. They manage all the archives through Git anyway, so it wouldn't be hard to replace my name on a paper. I repeated this for another paper on the ACL anthology, and from there I got in touch with a group called NCPWG that was developing the first official name change policy for a journal. With years of additional struggling against bureaucracies, it became possible for me and other trans authors to change our names in many publications. It was only while into that very, very lengthy process that I learned I'd been wrong about a key fact about Amelia. Amelia had come out and changed her name several years before Zay died. Zay had written almost all of her papers after the name change, and just let the old ones fade into obscurity the way most papers do. Amelia had never retroactively changed her name on a published paper. I was apparently the first one to do that because I thought Amelia had done it. Amelia's story is sad and ended too soon, and a not actually true thing I believed about her life gave me the confidence to make a positive change. I don't know if there's any neat moral to that. Footnotes. Name changes are possible in many parts of academia now, but not in Google Scholar, the zombie academic research engine that has an unearned position as the authority on all research. If you celebrate Trans Day of Rage instead, please forcibly remind a Googler that they run a trans exclusionary site that destroys the research careers of trans people. 2. This feels like it cannot be true. How can I possibly be the first? If there's someone else who managed to do it before me, I'd like to know. And I'd be kind of relieved because I feel like it's a lot to live up to. After just memorializing Puppy Doll, I like really resonate with this of like someone who you didn't know or didn't really know who still affected you. It's it's uh it's beautiful in a bittersweet way. I like having control over my image. I can't do that if a bunch of strangers were reading my name. I want to wake from my loved ones and community to be buried unpreserved in an unmarked grave near a tree. I'd be honored to have a memorial here or somewhere else small, but not on a gravestone or a database like what we just read. I see. That makes sense. And now I'm wondering, I wonder how many of the people on that list I disrespected by reading their name out if they didn't want their name read out, but I will never know because they're dead. Fun. Let's see, we got two poems, this and this. So I'll do an Aaron in the Morning article out. There's a couple of Aaron in the Morning articles I want to read, so I'll read one and then jump to something else, and then read another one and then jump to something else. We're gonna end with this poem, Lighthouse, which is what someone wrote for this year's Transgender Day of Remembrance. If you don't know, Aaron in the Morning is a prolific trans journalist who reports on trans news and is really has been really influential in trans news and getting shit out there because a lot of journalism really shits on trans people. Okay, so if folks don't know that there is a the first Congress woman who is trans was recently elected in the during this past election, and there's been a lot of bullshit about whether or not she should be allowed to use the bathroom in like on Capitol Hill or whatever. So we're gonna read a little bit about that right now. This is an opinion piece. Okay. Opinion. Republican bathroom panic over McBride shows it was never about sports or kids. Republicans are in a frenzy over trans Congresswoman Sarah McBride following a debate amongst Democrats about compromising on trans rights. Today's events make clear the folly of such a decision. In a move as predictable as it is outrageous, Republicans have launched a full blown crusade against the first transgender Congresswoman, Sarah McBride. Representative Nancy Mace has introduced a resolution to ban McBride from using women's restrooms and locker rooms, a measure that seems to enjoy significant support within the Republican caucus. Speaker of the House Mike Johnson hinted at a so-called accommodations that will effectively segregate McBride from public facilities entirely. This uproar comes as some Democrats and pundits toy with the idea of compromising on transgender rights, particularly in areas like sports. Today's events lay bare the folly of such a strategy. There is no middle ground with those intent on erasing transgender Americans from public life. News broke late Monday that Rep. Nancy Mace intended to introduce a resolution barring transgender people from using bathrooms or locker rooms matching their gender identity on congressional property. By Tuesday morning, Punchbowl News senior reporter Melanie Zanona confirmed that Speaker Mike Johnson would, quote, not allow biological men in women's bathrooms, adding that the proposal would be included in the House rules package. Since the announcement, the Republican Party has erupted into a full-blown panic over the relatively non-controversial mainline Democratic Congresswoman Sarah McBride. When asked about the resolution, Marjorie Taylor Greene responded bluntly, saying that she's a man and that she's biologically male and she's not allowed to use our women's restrooms, women's gym. She can go to the men's room. They're adding that the American people are sick of this shit. Rep. Nancy Mace echoes similar sentiments, stating Sarah McBride does not get a say. She then went to institute that McBride might abuse or sexually assault women. The Republican House Judiciary account that tweeted in support of the resolution asking, how is this controversial? Speaker Mike Johnson was pressed about the potential rule and stated that they will make accommodations, a term often used code for forcing transgender people to segregate into gender-neutral restrooms, frequently located farther from the offices and workspaces. You can watch Green Taylor's response to being asked about the resolution here, courtesy of congressional reporter Pablo Marquez as well as Newsmax. I've seen it more than once because I've been keeping up with the news, so I'm not gonna play it here. If you want to yourself, that is fine. Aaron in the Morning, Google, you go straight to the page. The reaction of Rep. McBride makes one thing crystal clear to Democrats and pundits alike. The Republican Party's debate over transgender Americans was never about sports or prison inmates. Time and time again, when given an inch, they take everything. That they've already pivoted to bathrooms before Congress is even convened should speak volumes. And the fact that the first transgender person they've targeted nationally is a mild mannered Democratic congresswoman representing a million Delawareans speaks even louder. If Representative McBride, a woman who championed and passed paid family leave for mothers on the brink of poverty, is deemed unsafe for women, then what transgender person could ever be considered safe? The absurdity of it is almost too staggering to believe. The truth is, the far right cannot resist targeting transgender people when they dare to step into positions of power. The mere presence of a transgender person as an equal is almost too much for them to bear, driving them to indulge their cruelest impulses. It was evident when Republicans targeted Representative Zoe Zephyr in Montana, silencing her and banning her from the House floor after she spoke out against anti transgender policies. That decision backfired spectacularly. People across the nation and across the world rallied around Zephyr, outraged by the extreme lengths Republicans went in order to exclude a transgender person from their ranks. Montana House Democrats went on to gain 10 seats in the state House, their largest gain in 30 years. Democrats have a golden chance to reframe the narrative on transgender rights. Republican rhetoric on sports and prisoners was never about fairness, it was about a disingenuous attempt to normalize discrimination. Some Democrats and pundits fell for it, but Republicans, led by the far right, are now overplaying their hand, targeting Sarah McBride and revealing the depths of their hate for transgender Americans. Just as GOP overreach in Montana backfired by rallying support for Zoe Zephyr, the attacks on McBride will likely do the same. Democrats must seize this moment to stand firm, contrasting their focus on jobs, infrastructure, and middle class support with the Republican Party consumed by cruelty that does nothing to improve people's lives. Sarah McBride apparently got in the memo hours after reports came out of Republicans' intent to target her in bathrooms. She responded, quote, "This is a blatant attempt from the far-right extremists to distract from the fact that they have no real solutions to what Americans are facing. We should be focused on bringing down the cost of housing, healthcare, and childcare, not manufacturing culture wars. Delawareans sent me here to make the American dream more affordable and accessible, and that's what I'm focused on." Then the next morning, she drove to Delaware to stand with firemen celebrating 100 years of service in the state. Republicans won't stop with McBride, nor with sports bans, national bathroom laws, or attacks on transgender teens. Their goal isn't compromise, and no amount of capitulation will stop the barrage of ads or the relentless assault on transgender Americans. Hate cannot be defeated through fear or focus groups or backroom deals. It demands courage. It requires people willing to rise to the moment and show their humanity to anyone willing to see it. Democrats now face one of these moments. McBride will soon have no choice but to rise and meet it. Whether Democrats stand with her will define not only their future, but the future of transgender people across the country. Bad news, everyone. Congressman McBride announces she will comply with rules declaring her a man. I was gonna jump to one of the poems, but I feel like I need to read this immediately after because, in terms of trans people talking about what's happening in politics right now, a lot of people are angry, myself included, because Aaron was literally just saying, yeah, we should not capitulate to the GOP before McBride immediately capitulates to the GOP. Ew, Democrats. Democrats are Democrats because of the where the Overton window is. Democrats are basically moderate Republicans at this point, and it's kind of unnerving. For the third consecutive day, the Republican Party was consumed by a frenzy over transgender Congresswoman Sarah McBride, Delaware. A faction of far-right lawmakers, led by Representative Nancy Mace, has targeted McBride with a push to ban transgender people from using bathrooms, gyms, and changing rooms. God, sorry, I have ADBL brainworms, and changing rooms that align with their gender identity. Speaker Mike Johnson escalated the attack, announcing that McBride would be barred from women's facilities and officially regarded as a man under house rules. Now McBride has issued a statement saying that while she disagrees with the rules, she will comply like a coward. Sorry, that was me editorializing. McBride's statement reads, I'm not here to fight about bathrooms. I'm here to fight for Delawareans and bring down cost facing families like all members. I follow the rules as outlined by Speaker Johnson, even if I disagree with them. This effort to distract from the real issues facing this country hasn't distracted me over the last several days, as I remain hard at work preparing to represent the greatest state in the Union come January. Serving the 119th Congress will be the honor of a lifetime, and I continue to look forward to getting to know my future colleagues on both sides of the aisle. Really? Sorry, this is the first time I read the complete statement, and that part just twists a screwdriver in my fucking eye. Ugh. She's like a fucking trans Kamala Harris. I hate it. I hate it so much. Each of us were sent here because voters saw something in us that they value. I have loved getting to see those qualities in future colleagues that I've met and look forward to seeing those qualities in every member come January. I hope all my colleagues will seek to do the same with me. They won't. They super won't. Also, before I continue reading it, also this her just being like, I'll do it, is throwing trans people who are gonna be using who could have used those same facilities under the bus, because it's not just affecting her. It's any trans person in Congress, like in congressional like buildings. And it's like it kind of reminds me of the like no you thing, where especially in trans femme culture there'll be like some sort of like encouragement or being like, oh, like you're really pretty, or you're valid, or what have you, and the kind of response to that being, oh, you're pretty or you're cute or you're valid, but I'm not. This isn't exactly the same thing, but it feels similar to me, because it's basically like, I will comply, but by complying, she's literally allowing this shitty draconian shit to affect other trans people who would be around. It's not just about her. And I think that's what, for me, makes it so much more cowardly. Because, okay, you represent Delawareans, right? But, like, you also represent Americans in general. And I would assume that as a trans person who ran for Congress, you would want to make the lives of trans Americans better or something. But she's fine capitulating. And not only that, but she's like, I'm looking forward to getting to know my colleagues on both sides of the aisle. Like, God, she has no fucking self-respect. I give her a year before she's hate crimed. One of my friends literally was like, if she ends up using the male bathroom, she's probably gonna get attacked. And I wanted to be like, no, no, it's Congress, that won't happen. And it's like, honestly, I wouldn't, I can't imagine that not happening. We're leaking, but fuck it. Sometimes you just gotta say fuck it and leak. McBride's statement is in response to Speaker Mike Johnson confirming that she would be considered a quote a man in House rules, and that he would use his power to block the Congresswoman from women's restrooms and women's gyms. In a draft statement obtained by The Hill, Speaker Mike Johnson declared, quote, all single-sex facilities in the Capitol and House office buildings, such as restrooms, changing rooms, and locker rooms, are reserved for individuals of that biological sex. He added, it is important to note that each member of the office has its own private restroom, and unisex restrooms are available throughout the Capitol, concluding with the familiar refrain, women deserve women's only spaces. In a separate interview, Johnson doubled down. For anyone who, quote, for anyone who doesn't know my established record on this issue, let me be unequivocally clear. A man is a man and a woman is a woman, and a man cannot become a woman. The decision has harsh implications for McBride and other transgender people. McBride will be forced to walk back to her office every time she needs to use a restroom, unable to access the common bathrooms like her colleagues. Transgender staffers who have long used restrooms matching their gender identity without issue will also be targeted under this policy. McBride will likely be barred from the women's gym as well. This amounts to a forced segregation of transgender congresswomen from public accommodations. With Johnson relying on familiar separate but equal rhetoric to justify the move, think the civil rights movement, or I should say Jim Crow laws, pointing to private, less accessible restrooms as an alternative that is neither equal nor fair. Shit, I remember when we first came out, when we worked at a movie theater, for the first like 2 months, we had to use the gender neutral restroom, which was farther away than every other restroom, and sometimes was full because it was a single person restroom, and there was like two of them. So a lot of times we were just like, on the edge of pissing ourselves, or did. Eventually we got permission to use the women's restroom, but it's still on our minds sometimes. Many expressed disappointment with McBride's decision. Michelle Valet, a parent of a transgender son, shared her frustration. Quote, now to see Sarah McBride essentially confirm that if those who hate my son scream loud enough, he should be expected to comply is a heartbreak I didn't really know existed. I need people to stand with, and for my son, to risk their own comfort to protect his ability to see himself not only in my eyes, but in this nation's eyes and heart. How do I tell him that a leader in his government's Congress doesn't think he's worth fighting for? I'm astonished at the short-sightedness of McBride's response, and I hope for the sake of all trans youth that she rethinks her position. Oh, I don't think she will. Especially because I don't have a concrete reason, actually. I mean, I hope she changes her mind, too. But, like, her statement really yucked my yum, I'll say. Transgender advocate and Harvard clinical instructor Algeria Carballo emphasized the broader implications. This isn't just about her. These rules apply to trans staffers and interns who do not have the protections and privilege that she has. Yeah, those people do not have access to their own private bathroom in their office. Ash Orr, a transgender organizer in West Virginia, was equally critical. Representative McBride messaging essentially suggests that if a federal ban is enacted, trans people should simply comply. While I understand the difficult position she is in, she holds a position of immense power and privilege. She should be using that power to defend and protect her community, not falling in line. Trans lives are at stake. The decision has broader implications for transgender rights nationwide, particularly for moderate Democrats seeking a way to avoid anti-trans attacks. If Sarah McBride, one of the most prominent transgender figures in America, complies with anti-trans rules banning her from public accommodations, similar laws in state legislature could gain traction as acceptable compromise. Meanwhile, transgender people in red states could be facing increased enforcement or expectations. Things are just ramping up. Like, there's just so much at stake. Meanwhile, McBride's acquiescing to the ban shows no sign of stopping the attacks. Bathroom bans continue to spread. Representative Nancy Mace has expanded her efforts, introducing a bill to ban transgender people from using bathrooms in all federally owned spaces, including national parks. Damn, I love national parks. Museums, and major airports like Dulles and DCA. Well, I guess I already don't use the airport, but still. God, this is fucked up. Nancy Mace responded to McBride's statement saying, Sarah McBride's promise to abide by Speaker Johnson's policy is a step toward acknowledging the rights of women everywhere. something we'll continue to demand without compromise. It remains to be seen what further restrictions might be aimed at McBride. Congress operates under a male female dress code, raising the possibility of additional regulations targeting her presentation. The House could even allow or require the use of masculine horrifics for addressing her. So far, Republicans have shown no signs of slowing their campaign against transgender rights and making it likely that McBride will face further attacks in the days ahead. I know some people are of the belief that if you're like a wet noodle, that bullies will leave you alone because they're not getting a reaction out of you, or like not the reaction they want. But in cases like this, that's not the play. In cases like this, they want us to they want us to roll over and let them fucking steamroll us. Which makes me very upset. Is anyone else experiencing stopping and starting randomly? I'd like to. I know Speckio has a lot. Since I have a lot of issues with our streams from a technical aspect, like especially if it's stuck at 1080p and you can't have it at a lower resolution. But just want to make sure that I'm not scuffed without knowing it. Okay, this is the last one about this particular topic. Nancy Mace, quote, "It's offensive that Sarah McBride thinks she's my equal." In recent days, Republican lawmakers have announced that the first trans congresswoman will be banned from bathrooms. Now, Nancy Mace makes it clear that it was never about, quote, danger. Over the past several days, Representative Nancy Mace and Republican leadership have escalated their attacks on Sarah McBride, the Democratic representative from Delaware and the first transgender congresswoman, targeting her over bathrooms and gym use. The fight culminated on Wednesday when Speaker Mike Johnson declared that McBride would be treated as a man under House rules, forcing her to use men's restrooms in gender-neutral facilities, despite her having used women's restrooms for a decade without incident. While Mace tried to justify her actions with claims of safety, even suggesting McBride might be a threat of sexual assault, her true motives became crystal clear during an appearance on Greg Kelly Reports. Dropping all pretense, Mace declared it, quote, offensive that McBride could ever dare consider herself equal. It is offensive, quote, it is offensive that a man in a skirt could ever think she's my equal. That his challenges are the same as mine. They're not. She's forcing her genitals into women's restrooms, into dressing rooms, into locker rooms. It's sick, it's twisted. You showed that clip and the left you saw the clip. You showed the clip. The left celebrating mental illness. I already read the quote. I'm sorry. I don't have it in me to watch the videos of the people saying the shit that they believe. It's there. I understand. I have my limitations. Thanks y'all for letting me know how stream was running for y'all. Always good to have folks letting me know if things are being all weird. Mace's inflammatory remarks came after Speaker Mike Johnson confirmed McBride will be treated as a man under House rules, citing his authority to maintain, quote, general control over Capitol facilities. These statements allow McBride's announcement that while she disagreed with the rules, she would comply with them. Yet Mace's rhetoric laid bare a deeper animosity, one that no amount of victory or concession could satisfy. The mere presence of McBride, a transgender lawmaker, as an equal is enough to drive them into outrage. It's worth noting that McBride represents just as many people as Mace, actually. More. McBride received 282,000 votes, significantly outpacing Mace's 169,000. While Mace represents South Carolina's 1st congressional district with a population of 734,000, McBride represents the entire state of Delaware, home to 1 million people. On the House floor, every representative wields equal voting power. McBride has as much right to represent her constituents as Mace does. several Democrats defended McBride and condemned Republican leadership on Wednesday evening. Congresswoman Alexandria Orozco Cortez, gosh, I haven't heard about her AOC in a while, highlighted the absurdity and hazards of enforcing such policies, stating that the idea that Nancy Mace wants little girls and women to drop trowel in front of who? An investigator? If women don't look woman enough to a Republican? They want to be able to inspect your genitals to use a bathroom? It's disgusting. Everyone should reject it completely. They're endangering women. They're endangering girls of all kinds, and everyone should reject it. It's gross. Senator Johnson Fetterman voiced his support for McBride on Blue Sky, writing, "There's no job I'm afraid to lose if it requires me to degrade anyone. If that's a defining issue for a voter, there will be a different candidate. We have a bathroom in my office that anybody is welcome to use, including Representative-elect Sarah McBride." Meanwhile, Representative Maxwell Frost, Florida, delivered a sharp rebuke to Nancy Mace, stating she's a huge attention getter, so it is part of her attention getting fetish. I just don't understand why bathrooms are top of the mind for her. Why she's thinking about where future members are gonna piss and shit. Republican leadership targeting a transgender individual in the Capitol shows no signs of abating. Speaker Mike Johnson's decision to classify Rep. Sarah McBride as male under House rules extends beyond her, affecting transgender staffers and visitors who lack private offices and may now struggle to find appropriate restroom facilities. Compounding this, Representative Nancy Mace has introduced a federal bill aiming to ban transgender individuals from using bathrooms on all federally owned properties, including VA hospitals, museums, and major DC airports like Duluth and Reagan. This legislation could significantly impact transgender individuals, particularly in Washington, D.C., which has one of the highest transgender populations in the United States. What? Huh? What? Sorry. Oh my god, that's insane. I had just had a seizure a little bit. Ugh. I am very surprised at that fact. I'm very surprised at that fact. And I mean, the implications of this happening despite that are also pretty terrifying. While the targeting of transgender people under a Trump administration was expected, the speed and intensity of these attacks are chilling. Many Democrats have rallied to defend McBride, but the silence from moderate Democrats, those who were directly targeted by anti-transgender ads during the election, remains. The question now is whether they will stand firmly against the coming tide of discriminatory legislation or capitulate on a fear campaign that will not stop with Sarah McBride. Optimistic claims of Republican attacks on McBride might alienate moderate Republican legislators have yet to materialize in any meaningful way, particularly in states dominated by Republican supermajorities. Meanwhile, transgender Americans are left to brace for impact, preparing for what promises to be a relentless and grueling 4 years. I think we will survive the 4 years, but I am not. Sorry, that I guess it's not fair. Not everyone will survive these 4 years, and that is painful. And not just transgender people either. There's a lot of unhoused people, a lot of racially marginalized people, a lot of disabled people, a lot of people who just don't have adequate access to health care, that because of the Trump presidency will not be alive in 4 years. And that's really terrifying and sad. And it didn't have to be this way. As always, thank you, Aaron, in the morning for reporting so much and succinctly. Okay. Actually, I think of which one I want to go to first. We'll do a poem, and then there's another article I want to read, and then this blog post, and then one last poem. A Million Small Boxes. An author in a cat. Sorry, I should say by Robin Hartz. A Million Small Boxes. An author in a castle gets to decide if you get to go home tonight. Friends laughing, wine glasses clinking, talking about how they are the victims of your joyous existence. Typing and scrawling, just asking questions. There's no need for name calling. Stop being so emotional. If you want us to be your allies when our support is so conditional. I fear the ones with guns. I fear the ones with blue checks, two sharp edges of the same knife driving itself into our heart, our community, our safety, our right to live and cry with joy for once. To them, I have nothing to say. To you, I say this. If one of them ends up killing me, please cut me into tiny pieces and put each piece of me in a box and decorate each box with a rainbow and place them on their doorsteps. Bury me under all their noses, who call us a threat, who call us groomers, who smile with their bigoted friends, who imply and suggest and ask fake questions, knowing this is the inevitable answer. Let them clean me up, the mess they made, bit by bit. Let me smell the rot. Let them smell the rot and the gore. Let them wipe it off their own porch. May my memory be a rainbow colored stain of blood they can never wash out. Tag Trans Day of Remembrance and Club Q, as well as poetry. That was a very visceral piece. I really liked it. All right. I actually need to pull out a link because I didn't have this one up already. The next thing I'm pulling up is the last proper article we'll be reading. Let's see. Some of y'all may have seen this on the Discord because we had posted it there yesterday, I believe. Uh, but this one set us off, especially yesterday, reading what happened with Congresswoman McBride, and then reading this, and then finding out it was Trans Day of Remembrance yesterday, made us so angry we wanted to scream at the top of our lungs. Two trans women beaten in train station while bystanders cheered. No one came to help them. One person said about how people cheered while the women were attacked. LGBTQ plus advocates say bystanders cheered as two transgender women were viciously attacked in Minneapolis earlier this month. In a statement, Minneapolis police told The Independent that the two women confronted a group of people who were making derogatory remarks about them at a downtown Minneapolis light rail station on November 10th, leading to a physical altercation. Amber Mum, one of the organizers of a rally in support of the victims at the station on Sunday, told the outlet that she's spoken to the women, identified as Dahlia and Jess. They told her that they were leaving the station when a man yelled anti-trans slurs at them. According to Mum, when Jess asked the men to stop, he, quote, sucker punched her. After Delilah hit the man with her cane, 4 or 5 other men began beating the pair. Both women were reportedly knocked unconscious, while Delilah sustained a broken nose and Jess left with multiple contusions to her ribs. Quote, no one came to help them. In fact, they said people were cheering the attackers on while they were getting beaten, Mom told CBS News. It was a traumatic event, and they are both still dealing with the physical consequences of that very acutely. But the community is kind of what's keeping them grounded right now, Mom told The Independent. Minneapolis told CBS News that they were investigating the incident, but made no arrests as of Sunday night. They need to step up because this keeps happening and it's ridiculous and unacceptable at this point. Mom said of the police response. According to to CBS News, Delilah and Jess moved to Minneapolis from Iowa because of the state's trans refuge law, introduced by State Representative Leigh Fink, Minnesota's first out trans legislator, and passed on March 2023. The law prevents out of state laws from interfering with people seeking gender affirming care in Minnesota. At, at Sunday's rally, Fink said she expects to see even more trans people moving to the state following the re-election of former President Donald Trump, whose campaign spent millions on anti-trans ads in battleground states during the final months of the campaign. People are so emboldened now. There's so much false data, so many false narratives about trans people, Mom told The Independent, adding that at Sunday rallies, bystanders repeated false claims about gender affirming surgeries being performed, quote, on 10-year-olds. One speaker at the rally told CBS News that Trump's reelection is fueling fear for the trans community. People are talking to me about erasing their social media presence, going back in the closet, they said. But Mom urged people to stay in the fight. The community here is beautiful. We're building a movement. We're going to get through this, and we're going to be stronger for it. And Minneapolis is going to be such a beautiful place for trans people to live. That is a great sentiment. Things are going to get worse. Things are going to be bad. Things like this will keep happening. But we can be safer if we stick together. And shit, I think things probably would have ended up worse if either of those two trans women were by themselves when that happened. But Mom urged people to stay in the fight. The community here is beautiful. We're building a movement. We're going to get through this, and we're going to be stronger for it. And Minneapolis is going to be such a beautiful place for trans people to live, she said. At the same time, Mom noted that trans people in the city are preparing for a possible uptick in anti-trans violence by enrolling in self-defense classes and looking into getting handgun permits. Quote, people are about to get a lot more hostile and emboldened in their transphobia, she said. That she told The Independent. So what do we do to protect ourselves when we're out? That is the issue. Also, in terms of self-defense stuff, I would say also look up what self-defense items are legal in your state, because the last thing you want is to have a self-defense item and you use it, and then like you have to do a police statement, and then you get in trouble for defending yourself with an item that your state doesn't feel that you should have. Just do your best, okay? Um, yeah, this one had been on our mind a lot because I feel like something like this is a turning point. There's been a lot of random transphobia or queer like queer phobic violence like ever since we've been aware of the trans community, like I mentioned way at the beginning of stream. However, this is the first time I have heard of it happening in a general public space in a generally left or liberal state. And not only did people not help, but people cheered. It is terrifying and dehumanizing and humiliating. All right, we're almost done. Okay, so this is going to be talking about necropolitics a little bit, and we'll mention Palestine a little bit as well. So keep those things in mind. If you don't know what necropolitics is the politics of death. That could include things like only having your humanity validated in death. It can mean that your life is not as valuable as other people's. Necropolitics is the politics of death and people. The remainder is in your life. Recently, I was listening to NPR's Code Switch, where Palestinian American poet Fadi Jada spoke about his own Palestinian American identity in regards to the bombings in Gaza. And something he said struck a chord within me. Quote, one of the things you learn about being Palestinian in English is that you're constantly encountered through a lens of necropolitics. You are only alive when you are dying. It is a terrible thing to feel invisible. To feel invisible only when you are suffering. Or I think this may be a typo. I think it's a terrible thing to only feel visible when you are suffering. I think that's what they were saying, but I could be wrong. The word sat in my gut for a while. Of course, I was guilty of this, not just during the bombing of Gaza, but I was the one of the but I was one of the many white people who went out and bought quote how to be anti-racist after the murder of George Floyd. I was part of the collective who knew of Rodney King only as a line in a rap song. When I heard this quote, I thought about this time of year, how it is Trans Day of Remembrance, and my first event in 2014, when I stood around with the community and read out the names of those who had been murdered in the past year. I biked home and cried many angry tears. How was it? How was it that this gathering and one of the most LGBTQ plus friendly spaces in Texas had seemingly no cis allies in the audience? Where where were they with us to grieve the losses? They even know? What are our identities outside of necropolitics? Outside of indifference? Fadi continues, quote, for me, when I think about being Palestinian, it's about eating delicious food, eating with your loved ones, staying up late and enjoying the breeze. Much of our identity is eclipsed by violence. But even if objects are destroyed, you still have people. There is a beautiful saying in Arabic, the remainder is in your life. And it is something you say to someone who has lost someone, their husband, their family, their partner. And they will respond, and in yours. It is a saying that believes in the continuum of memory and the life force. What we do in our writing is sharing the remainder of the lives of those who have been lost. Perhaps these words will reach your heart as they have mine. It certainly reached mine. I'm glad that co-host is uh is still up, even if it is in read-only mode for the rest of the year before it dies completely, because there's so much good writing on co-host. It's so good, and I'm glad this was here and I could read it to you all. Our friends raise issues about what might happen with social media under Trump, even decentralized stuff like Fetty. Oh yeah, I mean, if a law gets passed that uh, generally, if a law gets passed that social media companies are like held liable for whatever people on their platform posts, then it will change the face of the internet as we know it. There's a lot at stake on a lot of different fronts. All right, here's the last thing we're reading for this today. Um, Not the last thing related to observing Trans Day of Remembrance, but the last of the research thing that I'm showing you, if that makes sense. Lighthouse for Transgender Day of Remembrance 2024, by Achelius. Lighthouse. In a better world, Brianna blows out 18 candles on a cake with pink icing, surrounded by new friends. Nets plays lead in their school play, grins through the curtain call, laughs stage drenched and glowing. Eden swirls Leia and Candlin in a honey dunk dance spun sugar, under spun sugar party lights. And And Kari makes a grilled cheese for his mom as the dawn cards gentle fingers through his hair. His favorite stuffed giraffe on the table beside him. And you will glimpse in this world the scope of the new moon. You are not abandoned. I hear the grief strung, cry and tremor song. We pluck the same ocean. My hands are yours. It does not have to hurt to become. Lavender nail polish hidden in the sock drawer. Hesitant introductions. First haircut. I remember. I remember you. Your chosen name in the mouth of someone who loves you is my favorite sound. Now, every day you choose to live, I thank you. Each faltering breath you add to our chorus. Your waxing moon is light for all. These stepping stones we sing for you come home. These stepping stones we sing for you come home. Yeah, yeah, it is hard. Thank you all for being here. I think that it's important to keep moving forward without disregarding and forgetting the people who we've lost. What was it? The for our the rest of our lives and yours, we keep them with us. The remainder is in your life. The remainder of those we lost are in our lives if we choose to remember them and honor them. I think next year, maybe for Trans Day of Remembrance, we will look at more than just who we lost in 2025. Um, but we have time to think about that a whole year. Please, please try not to isolate yourself. Even if it's talking to friends online, that is better than just turtling and doom scrolling and giving up. The fight is not over, okay? We love you.